I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca, Canada's first online financial news and research service, providing insider news and knowledge to investors. His website, CanadianInsider.com. Welcome back to the show, and Happy New Year, Ted.
Happy New Year, Jim, to you and all your listeners.
You're fresh back from Japan, where we talked to you last time. Your impressions of what's going on there?
Well, the Japanese economy is ticking along, but it's got this ticking demographic time bomb. It's an aging population, and those are forces that the government cannot counter. Primarily because they're not really into building up population via immigration. Although immigration has improved. When I say improved, it has grown in terms of workers. They're letting more workers in, but the Japanese economy is ticking along, and there's going to be some challenges though with the new Trump administration with the Trans-Pacific Partnership dead in the water. So it will be interesting to see who wins and loses in this new period. And I think the boat has not come into the harbor on that. We're still waiting to see what's going to arrive in form of Trump international trade policy. So but we won't have too long to wait. Maybe another week.
Well, BC is better positioned, I guess, than most Canadian provinces if Trump decides to build a virtual wall, let us say, with trading partners, because 40% of BC's trade is with Asia, and the World Bank just said it expects that the smaller economies in Asia will really boom in the next couple of years, and that's good news for Canada, is it?
Well, look, BC has been totally, to be quite blunt, screwed by these so-called free trade agreements ever since the very first one that Mulroney negotiated because they had to set aside softwood lumber as a side deal, which was basically benefited the Americans, and that continued on through NAFTA, and which Chrétien signed. So it's a bipartisan law. I guess I'm going to call it sort of not selling out of the lumber industry, but the reality was the Americans protected their industry very effectively. So what happens at NAFTA? Sure, there's going to be some companies that will be impacted in BC, but you're right. The big stakes are in Ontario with the auto industry, and it's really a Central Canada issue more so than a BC issue. But it's not to say there's no concerns here, but it's not going to impact us like it would impact Ontario. That's for sure. So again, we'll have to wait and see. Mexico seems to be the focus of attention by Mr. Trump, and Mr. Trudeau is not getting a lot of attention, and I think Mr. Trudeau is quite happy with that.
Well, the Prime Minister did address Congress on its first day back after the election, so obviously he's concerned about Canada-U.S. relations.
Well, he is. I just think he's well aware that the game has changed with Mr. Trump. He's shaken up his cabinet. I think that was a pretty smart move to as much as people may like Stéphane Dion, in terms of his at a personal level. He probably just wasn't the person that would fit, into Canada-U.S. relations now with the new government. I think, had Hillary won, and the change may not have been necessary, but they did have to make a move there to get somebody who's a little bit more, I guess, rough and tumble, I guess, to deal with the American side. And I think Trudeau's probably done the best he could in making the move there.
The BC government says Kinder Morgan has met all 5 of their conditions for the building of their pipeline from Edmonton to Burnaby. Is that good economic news for BC?
For BC, it's good. It's good news. It's economically, it's not going to make or break the province, but it's certainly good news for those involved with the construction and the maintenance of the pipeline. But it's even better news for the BC Liberals because not that they've decided to approve the pipeline, but that the NDP came out, it seems unequivocally against it, as it just really makes it even harder now for the NDP to win the upcoming election. It's almost as if the NDP have decided they're not going to fight the BC Liberals in the next election. They've almost, with that kind of decision, it's almost like they've decided that they can't win, and that they're fighting out for the environmental moral high ground with the Green Party. So in the next election, it seems like there's going to be 2 elections going on. One will be who forms the government, and at this point, while it's not a guaranteed, when we talked about this in December, the BC Liberals could still, fumble the housing ball and allow the NDP to really stumble across the finish line. But the NDP kind of had the BC government at least on the defensive on the housing file, and now they've just essentially given all that political ground up, and it allowed the BC Liberals and the Premier to campaign on the Kinder Morgan pipeline that is going to be an economic benefit and help with the national climate change strategy. And the NDP have to still fight with the Greens to see which party has the stronger environmental credentials to stop it. So it's I'm not terribly surprised that the NDP did this, but it is a bit bewildering. It's almost as if they don't really want to win, which is fine. If they're happy to lose on principle, that's fine. But I can tell you the other big winner is the BC mining industry, because by making it even less likely now that the NDP are going to win, it's good news for all the junior mining companies and senior mining companies as well, that they won't likely have to deal with an NDP, a hostile NDP administration. I mean, I think quite legitimately, voters will be wondering if the NDP can't support tankers going through a harbor which has never had any major incidents with the Trans Mountain operator. How is the NDP going to ever approve any kind of risky project? I mean, the NDP leader Horgan yesterday said that that they can't support it, the Trans Mountain pipeline, because it's too risky. Well, I have news for the NDP. Anything you do in business is risky, and unless you're going to run the economy, as a government entity, that only provides social services and movies and some software development that hopefully, of course, wouldn't involve violence on video games, because that too is risky. They haven't got a lot of options left to kind of stimulate to grow the BC economy. So the bottom line is the Kinder Morgan decision has been a big boost for the BC Liberals. It's been a big boost for the taxpayers who now will less likely face an NDP government raising taxes, and it's a big boost for the mining industry, who will likely not have to face an NDP hostile government in terms of getting projects approved. And it's a big boost for the NDP in Alberta, who are basically being left hanging by their brethren here in British Columbia. And it's a big boost for the MLA from Point Grey, David Eby, the NDP MLA, because first of all, yes, the NDP opposing Kinder Morgan is going to help re-elect him, and all the NDP MLAs in the Lower Mainland, sure, but they're not going to win the government. They're not going to win any new seats by this policy, and they have to win new seats to win. And David Eby, who has established himself as pretty shrewd political operator, will be sitting pretty well after the next NDP loss to potentially take over the party. So he's the other big winner in Horgan's decision to not back the pipeline. Although I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to him, but I would be. It's going to help David Eby's chances of getting reelected. So I'm sure he, from his own seat, is not uncomfortable with that position. But it's not going to help the NDP win the election. It's going to hurt them. And unless they can get the election refocused on to housing, and that's a long shot, because, well, again, it's a Lower Mainland issue. They've got to be able to make that issue resonate across the province. It's going to be very tough for the NDP now to win.
Well, polling probably is split between the people on the coast and those not on the coast.
Well, it's more than that too. I mean, there's a group of Lower Mainland ridings in Victoria that will support quite strongly the NDP position, but they already own those seats, and so they need to win. You need to get seats. You have to take them from the Liberals, and yes, they could win a couple of other Vancouver Lower Mainland seats potentially with this, and on the housing file, they might be able to pick up a couple of seats, but they need to pick up more than a couple. They need to pick up more than a dozen to win, and they're not going to be able to do that just in the Lower Mainland. They need to get seats from the interior of British Columbia. And, this whole debate about tankers going past Stanley Park is just not going to be up on the radar screen of people in northern BC and in the Kootenays and certainly Peace Country. That's just not going to do it for the NDP. So, they've certainly got their work cut out for them. That's for sure.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after the break.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, the Canadian economy continues to do better than many people predicted it would in the new year.
Well, we talked about this the last interview of the year, that analysts were so down on the Canadian economy, and there was a story in Bloomberg about how awful the Canadian economy was because our inflation rate was, lo and behold, under 2%. Well, guess what? We had a great jobs report just on Friday that basically Canada created 54,000 jobs in December, most of it full-time work. It was really hard for the perma Canadian bears, economic bears, to find something bad to say, except that, well, you can't, go by 1 month of data, which is true, but the November numbers were also pretty decent for Canada as well. So the situation in Canada is looking better because the situation in the Saskatchewan and Alberta is likely stabilizing in terms of the commodity prices. You're probably going to see the end of these awful job cuts that have been plaguing those resource industries in that area, and employment's always kind of the last to turn. So, what we talked about in December was that Canadian insiders in the fall rebalancing of our Canadian Insider Index were tilting towards old-fashioned Canadian economic recovery, and that is the resource area and the economies around the resource area. So consumer spending, has probably hit a bottom in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and you probably see a pickup there. And so we've had a good run since the certainly since the Trump victory on the 18th of on the 8th of November. The Canadian market since then has done pretty well. I'm just looking at my chart here, and the Canadian Insider Index is up 6%. The S&P 500 is about, in U.S. dollar terms, is up 6%. In Canadian dollar terms, I believe it would be less than that because Canadian dollar has done quite well recently. Again, flying in the face of some of these predictions you heard of 69, 68 cents. It was trading around 76 cents the last time I checked. So the Canadian market's been doing fairly well since the Trump election, and Canadian insiders were betting that it was going to improve in any event before the Trump election. We did the rebalancing on November 18th, but the valuation date was October 31st for the election, and we saw a nice increase in the allocation over to the energy sector and companies that sell goods and services to Albertans and people who live in Saskatchewan. They also got a lot of attention. Company such as this is not a stock recommendation, but Auto Canada went into our index, and they sell a lot of pickups in Western Canada, and their business will do better if those economies do better. And Empire Stores, which went through a very tough experience with its Safeway operations in Western Canada. Well, maybe, and I underscore maybe the worst is over there. We'll have to see, but that they're also in the Canadian Insider Index and would benefit from an uptick in the Alberta economy. Canadian Tire is another company that would benefit from the Alberta economy. So, we're betting on. We're seeing insiders bet on the old Canadian economy, Jim, and so far it's working out. Now could something go wrong? Absolutely. Could oil surprise and reverse, or could Trump make a major geopolitical policy error within the first few hours of his presidency? It's possible, but on balance, so far things are playing out in favor of the old economy optimists, and the pessimists will have to wait for some bad news to come in and put things into reverse. So we'll see if the good fortune for Canada continues. We're in a volatile period now with a new president who likes to surprise people and the world with policies. So of course, every economy I think is vulnerable to surprise, but so far so good. China, despite some of the headlines, seems to be stabilizing, and even Europe seems to be stabilizing. So things can only keep going bad in Europe for so long. Eventually, there's got to be just a bit of a mean reversion to some sort of a direction towards normalcy. I'm not sure they'll get to normalcy, but it can't be all bad all the time. At some point, you do get a rebound, just of pent-up demand. And, I think we're seeing that in Europe. I think you're seeing some signs of the real economy stabilizing in China. And the oil price is going to help the old Canadian economy in the new year.
Ted, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, it's great to be back, Jim.
My guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of InkResearch.ca, his website, CanadianInsider.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.